The movie opens at night inside a house, where two teenage girls are sitting in a bedroom watching TV. One of them pulls out an old videotape that looks creepy and says that anyone who watches it dies exactly 7 days later. The other girl is terrified and admits that she actually watched the tape a week ago with her boyfriend. She also says that the phone rang the moment the tape ended. Suddenly, the girl starts choking, but it turns out she was only joking and pulling a prank. A few moments later, the house phone rings. It takes a while before anyone answers, and when one of the girls finally picks up, she hands the phone to the girl who watched the tape, saying the call is for her. However, it turns out to be her mother on the other end. After the call ends, the living room TV suddenly turns on by itself. The screen is filled with static, with no actual picture. The girl is startled and walks over to turn it off, but the moment she turns around, it switches back on by itself. She immediately unplugs it from the wall. As she's doing that, she catches a glimpse of a shadowy figure darting out of the television and into the house at lightning speed. She then walks into the kitchen and notices that the refrigerator door is open. After closing it, she heads downstairs to call her friend on the phone. When the conversation ends, she goes back upstairs and notices water dripping from the ceiling of one of the bedrooms. Feeling uneasy, she slowly tiptoes toward the door and gently pushes it open. Inside, she finds another television still turned on. The instant she looks at what's playing on the screen, she lets out a blood-curdling scream as the image seems to pull her into it. The scene suddenly changes, revealing a young boy sitting alone in a classroom, drawing and scribbling on paper. His mother walks in, and after a moment, he gets up to leave while she talks to him. Later, the mother, Rachel, speaks with her son Aiden's teacher. The teacher shows her several of Aiden's drawings, explaining that they make her uncomfortable because of how disturbing they are. Rachel reassures her, saying that drawing is simply Aiden's way of expressing himself, and that he'll be fine. When Rachel and Aiden return home and she tucks him into bed, Aiden tells her that Katie, the girl who died at the beginning of the movie, told him how much time he has left before he dies. He then wishes Rachel good night, but instead of calling her Mom, he calls her by her first name. The next day, they attend Katie's funeral. Rachel talks with Katie's mother in the kitchen, where the grieving woman explains that she's been trying to understand what happened to her daughter. She even consulted several doctors, but none of them could determine the cause of Katie's death. She asks Rachel if she can help uncover the truth. Katie's mother also describes how horrifying Katie's face looked when they found her. Afterward, Rachel goes into the backyard and speaks with two other girls about Katie, hoping to gather more information. During the conversation, a young man walks over and claims that everything happened because of a videotape. He also mentions that Katie's boyfriend died as well. Meanwhile, Aiden enters Katie's bedroom and stares intently at the television. As soon as he does, he senses that something is terribly wrong. Rachel enters the room shortly afterward, while Aiden quietly leaves. Rachel begins searching through Katie's belongings and notices that Katie had scribbled over the faces of every female model in her magazines. In the next scene, Rachel leaves the subway station while looking through Katie's belongings. She comes across a photo of Katie and her friends, but all of their faces appear horribly distorted and blurred. As she continues flipping through a newspaper, Rachel discovers that Katie's boyfriend died at exactly 10 p.m. She then realizes that another person also died at that exact same time. After checking records at work, she finds out that Katie herself died at the very same hour. Rachel then drives to a remote cabin resort. When she arrives, she speaks with the manager and asks about Katie and her friends, who had stayed there. The man explains that they left without paying their bill. Rachel decides to stay there herself, and rents the very same cabin where Katie had stayed. While searching the cabin, she finds the old videotape that Katie watched sitting on a shelf and carefully takes it with her. Once inside the cabin, Rachel plays the tape. A series of surreal, unsettling images flashes across the screen. None of the images seem connected or make any sense, but one particular image keeps repeating. Eventually, the tape ends on that same image. Seconds later, her phone rings. She answers it, and hears a terrifying voice telling her that she has only 7 days left. Panicked, Rachel rushes out of the cabin, looking around in fear. In the following scene, Rachel returns to her apartment, marking the first day of the 7-day countdown. Aiden goes to school while it's raining outside, and Rachel stays home, relaxing on the couch with Noah. She shows him the photo of Katie and her friends with their distorted faces. Noah then takes a picture of Rachel and notices that her face also appears strangely distorted in the photograph. Noah asks if he can watch the videotape Rachel told him about. Although she's hesitant at first, she eventually lets him watch it. While Noah is watching the tape, Rachel stands on her balcony and looks toward the apartment buildings across the street. She notices that many people seem completely glued to their television screens. A little later, Noah joins her outside and tells her he has finished watching the tape. At that moment, the phone rings inside the apartment. He asks if she's going to answer it, and they both walk back inside, but Rachel deliberately ignores the call. She then asks Noah if he found the tape scary. He says he didn't. Rachel tells him that 4 people died after watching it. Noah explains that no one dies immediately. The curse takes exactly 1 week to claim its victim after they've watched the tape. Rachel then asks who created the videotape. Noah replies that he needs to watch it again before he can fully understand what's really going on. After he leaves, Rachel walks over to the phone and discovers there's a recorded voicemail waiting. She hesitates for a moment, but eventually presses the delete button and erases the message. In the next scene, Rachel is at work, sitting alone in a room and watching the videotape again. As she watches it, she glances at a machine that's supposed to display data and updates, but she notices that all the numbers on the screen are scrambled and impossible to read. She taps the device several times, but nothing changes. She then rewinds to the part where a fly lands on the TV screen. Thinking it's real, she reaches out to touch it, only to realize it's just part of the video. The movie then moves into the second day. Rachel and Noah are reviewing the tape together. Noah asks if it's a copy of the original, and she says yes. He explains that the distorted numbers suggest the tape is missing certain technical properties. He compares it to a person being born without fingerprints, which sparks Rachel's curiosity. She asks him how the tape was recorded, and although he admits he doesn't know, he promises he'll figure it out. As they continue watching, Noah points to a scene with a mirror. He explains that the camera should be visible in the reflection because of the angle, but strangely, there's no camera reflected at all. Just then, Rachel's coworker walks into the room. Rachel quickly grabs the tape and leaves, with Noah following her. He asks why she's leaving, and she tells him she doesn't want anyone else watching the tape. He reminds her that she let him watch it, but Rachel ignores the comment and walks away. As she leaves the building, she notices a ladder leaning against the wall, reminding her of a similar ladder she saw in the videotape. The story then jumps to the third day at a psychiatric hospital. A young woman is walking down the hallway while a nurse calls out to her. It's Becca, the same girl who was with Katie on the night she died. Rachel sits down with Becca in a private room and asks her about Katie, but Becca remains completely silent, as if she's lost in another world. Rachel then asks her about the videotape and how Katie died. To Rachel's surprise, Becca finally speaks and says she wants to show her something. Rachel looks at her in confusion and asks who she really is, almost as if she's trying to understand what's wrong with her. Instead of answering, Becca simply grabs Rachel's hand and quietly says, "You have 4 days left." Afterward, Rachel goes to a lab where she can print still images from video footage. She tries to print a picture of the lighthouse she saw in the cursed tape, but when she presses the print button, the machine malfunctions. She then rewatches the scene with the fly. This time, it looks incredibly real. She reaches toward the screen, and to her shock, she actually grabs the fly and pulls it out of the television. What was only an image inside the tape has become a real fly in her hand. At that exact moment, blood begins dripping from her nose. Despite everything, she manages to print the picture of the lighthouse. The 4th day comes to an end, and Rachel is now at the library looking through a book about lighthouses. She finds a photograph of a lighthouse that's identical to the one she printed. The book says it's located on an island called Mosco Island. Rachel searches the internet for information about the island and finds a photograph of several women standing beside the lighthouse. One of them is the woman she saw brushing her hair in the videotape. The name beneath the photo reads Anna Morgan. Rachel begins digging into Anna Morgan's past. Little by little, she uncovers shocking information. She discovers reports about several horses that mysteriously drowned, the very same image she had seen in the videotape. As she connects the pieces, Rachel learns that Anna suffered from terrifying hallucinations and eventually took her own life. Meanwhile, Noah is standing inside a convenience store. While waiting at the register, he notices himself on one of the store's television screens. His face appears horribly distorted and twisted. Startled and confused, he immediately leaves the store. The scene cuts back to Rachel as she returns home and finds the babysitter watching Aiden. The babysitter is staring blankly at a television filled with static before suddenly snapping back to reality. She and Rachel talk briefly about Aiden, and then the babysitter leaves. Rachel calls a friend and asks if she can watch Aiden for a couple of days because she's going out of town. While she's on the phone, she walks into the kitchen to get a glass of water. Suddenly, she starts choking violently and struggles to breathe. The sensation continues until she feels something stuck in her throat. She desperately pulls at it, and finally drags a long strand out of her mouth with a small pendant hanging from the end. She returns to the phone and notices a drop of water leaking from one of the tiny holes in the receiver. She immediately starts searching for Aiden. Entering one of the rooms, she sees what appears to be a young girl sitting in a chair with her face completely hidden behind long black hair. Rachel slowly approaches, and the girl reaches out and touches her arm. Rachel suddenly jolts awake in terror, realizing it was all a nightmare. She looks at her arm and sees a mark exactly where the girl touched her. She frantically searches for Aiden and finally finds him sitting in front of the TV, watching the cursed videotape. Rachel completely falls apart and demands to know why he watched it. Just then, the phone rings. She answers quickly and immediately hangs up. A second later, it rings again. This time she answers, screaming that she just wants to be left alone, only to discover it's Noah calling. Noah tells her that he finally believes everything she said. Rachel then reveals that Aiden watched the tape. When Noah asks who watched it, she replies, "Our son." 6 days pass, and Rachel is back in Katie's room, studying her drawings. Later, she and Noah are driving together, and Rachel begins telling him about Anna Morgan. She explains that Anna used to be a happy, cheerful woman, but eventually her life took a tragic turn. When they finally arrive at their destination, Rachel steps out of the car into the pouring rain. Noah follows and hands her a folded piece of paper that Aiden drew for him. Written on it is the word, "Mom." Later, while riding on a ferry, Rachel goes through the documents she found about Anna. That's when she realizes Anna had a daughter. She then approaches a horse that's tied up in a narrow enclosure and gently reaches out to pet it. The horse suddenly becomes extremely agitated, breaks free from its ropes, and starts running wildly across the ferry. Several crew members try to stop it, but they're unsuccessful. The horse charges forward, leaps over the side of the ferry, and plunges into the ocean. Rachel rushes to the other side of the ferry to see what happened and notices blood spreading across the surface of the water. In the next scene, Noah visits the psychiatric hospital and asks the staff for Anna Morgan's records. They refuse to give them to him, so he sneaks off to search the records room himself. As he approaches the door, he notices a fly resting on it, which strikes him as odd. He enters the room and calls out Anna's name, almost as if he expects her to answer. At the same time, Rachel arrives at the Morgan family home, where she meets Anna's husband, Richard. He invites her inside and asks if she's there because of the horses. Rachel lies and says yes, then asks whether the horses had gone crazy. Richard confirms that they had. Inside the house, Rachel notices the same mirror she saw in the videotape. She begins talking about Anna and says she can only imagine how painful it must have been for him to lose her. Richard suddenly becomes suspicious, realizing Rachel is there for another reason. She shows him the videotape and asks if he knows anything about it, but he denies having any knowledge of it. Rachel then asks him about his daughter, but Richard insists that he never had a daughter. He grows angry, starts yelling about how reporters have been harassing him for years, and finally throws Rachel out of the house after she brings up his wife. Outside, Rachel unfolds the drawing Aiden gave her. It contains a picture of the house. She studies it carefully, hoping it might reveal some hidden clue. Meanwhile, Noah finally locates Anna Morgan's medical records and discovers that she had tried to have children several times but was unsuccessful. The moment he reads this, his nose begins bleeding, just like Rachel's did earlier. He then finds a note stating that he needs to watch a specific videotape. That's enough for him to stop searching the files and begin looking for that tape instead. At the same time, Rachel calls Aiden and asks him about the drawing he made for her. Aiden tells her that a little girl asked him to draw it. He then adds that the girl lives in a dark place. After that, Rachel goes to meet a doctor who used to know the Morgan family and asks her about them. The doctor wants to know why Rachel is asking these questions, so Rachel explains that it has something to do with her son, and possibly Anna's daughter as well. The doctor tells her that Anna desperately wanted to have a child, but when she couldn't, she adopted a little girl. No one ever knew where that girl had come from. She adds that the family experienced horrifying events, and the adopted child was most likely the cause of them. That's why they were referred to a psychiatric facility. The girl is no longer there, and according to the doctor, everything on the island has been peaceful ever since. Meanwhile, Noah is walking with an employee to retrieve a videotape he's been searching for after pretending to be Richard Morgan, Anna's husband. When they reach the storage box where the tape is supposed to be, they discover it's gone. The employee tells Noah that the last person to check it out was Richard Morgan himself, and that happened just the night before. At the same time, Rachel arrives at Richard Morgan's house. She knocks on the door, but no one answers, so she lets herself inside and starts searching the place. She eventually returns to the mirror she saw in the videotape, and notices a box on the floor filled with different belongings. As she goes through it, she finds a certificate, but suddenly a large handgun catches her attention. Startled, she drops everything she was holding. A moment later, she notices a videotape already inside the VCR. She presses play, and Samara appears on the screen, sitting in a doctor's office during an interview. The doctor asks her about the drawings she created, and Samara replies that she doesn't actually draw them, she simply sees them. Samara then asks to see her mother, but the doctor tells her that it isn't possible yet because it would only hurt her. She goes on to talk about her father, saying that he doesn't love her and cares more about his horses than he does about her. While Rachel is watching this recording, Richard suddenly appears behind her. He strikes her hard, knocking her to the floor, then heads upstairs. Rachel follows him and demands to know what he did to Samara. She even asks him if he killed her. Instead of answering directly, Richard begins talking about the darkness and the evil that Samara brought into their lives. He insists that it will never stop, and says Rachel's presence there is proof of that. He then connects electrical wires, climbs into a bathtub filled with water, and electrocutes himself, taking his own life. Rachel stands frozen in shock until Noah arrives and tries to calm her down. As Rachel processes everything that has happened, she remembers Aiden saying that the girl hated the barn. The two of them head there immediately. They open the door and find a ladder that looks exactly like the one from the videotape. Climbing up, they discover a little girl's room. It was Samara's room. Rachel realizes that Richard had been keeping Samara locked in there. As they continue searching, Noah notices something unusual on one of the walls. He peels back a section of wallpaper and uncovers a strange mark. They remove the rest of the wallpaper, revealing a huge painting of a tree covering the entire wall. Rachel stares at it and says she's seen that place before. It's on Shelter Island. Rachel's final day has arrived. She and Noah drive to Shelter Island and return to the cabin where Rachel first watched the cursed videotape. Standing there, unsure what to do next, Rachel tells Noah that it's up to him now because her time has run out. Noah becomes frustrated and yells at her, insisting there must be a reason they were led back to this place. In his anger, he starts smashing furniture around the cabin. As he does, several small marbles roll across the floor and gather in one specific spot. They pull back the rug and discover a strange symbol beneath it. Noah grabs an axe and begins breaking through the wooden floor. Once the boards are removed, they uncover a hidden well beneath the cabin. They lift the well's cover and look inside, but it's too dark to see the bottom. At that moment, the television in the cabin starts turning on and off by itself. Water begins pouring out of it, and the floorboards start coming loose. They throw an object down into the well, and suddenly hear a strange sound. A massive swarm of insects, mostly flies, bursts out of the well, terrifying both Rachel and Noah. Without warning, the floor collapses. The television crashes into Rachel, knocking her into the well. When she regains consciousness, she finds herself submerged in water. She screams for Noah, who promises he'll find a way to pull her out. Looking around inside the well, Rachel notices a nail sticking out of the wall. It reminds her of one of the horrifying images from the videotape. Then the well's lid slowly begins closing on its own, while strands of hair float across the water. Suddenly a hand grabs her, pulling her into a vision of Samara's past. She sees Samara standing beside the well in a field while her mother, Anna, walks up behind her, gently reassuring her that everything will be okay. Then, without warning, Anna places a bag over Samara's head and throws her into the well. Anna says that Samara was everything she had ever wanted. The vision ends, and Rachel realizes that Samara was still alive when she was thrown into the well. Moments later, Rachel discovers Samara's body lying in the water. It looks perfectly preserved, as though time had never touched it. Rachel gently cradles the body in her arms, but within seconds it begins rapidly decomposing until nothing remains but a blackened skeleton. Meanwhile, Noah shouts from above, warning Rachel that it's getting late and the sun has already set. Rachel finally lets go of Samara's remains. In the next scene, the police arrive and rescue Rachel from the well. Noah sits beside her and tells her that it's finally over. Then he asks how long someone could possibly survive inside a well like that. Rachel quietly answers, 7 days. The three of them return home. Rachel tucks Aiden into bed, and Noah tells her to call him later. A short while later, Aiden wakes up and finds Rachel sitting beside him. He asks what happened to Samara. Rachel tells him that she set her free and gave her peace. Aiden immediately looks disturbed and asks why she did that, insisting that it wasn't supposed to happen. Rachel looks at Aiden's arm and notices the exact same mark Samara left on her own arm. Then blood begins dripping from Aiden's nose. In the next scene, Noah is at work, focused on what he's doing, when the television suddenly turns on by itself, displaying nothing but static. Startled, he walks over and tries to turn it off, but it immediately switches back on. Then the familiar black and white image of the well appears on the screen. Rachel repeatedly tries to call him, but Noah seems hypnotized, unable to look away from the television or answer the phone. Suddenly, Samara begins climbing out of the well shown on the TV screen. Step by step, she crawls closer until she emerges from the television into the room itself. At the same time, Rachel races through the streets, driving as fast as she can in a desperate attempt to reach Noah before it's too late. Samara fully steps out of the television and slowly walks toward him. Noah backs away in terror, falls to the floor, and desperately crawls backward, too terrified to even stand. Samara calmly continues approaching until she's standing directly in front of him, staring into his eyes. Just then, Rachel bursts into the room and hangs up the phone that has been ringing. She sees Noah sitting in a chair with his back turned toward her. As she walks over and turns him around, she lets out a horrifying scream. Rachel storms out of the room, devastated and overwhelmed with grief. When she gets home, she immediately yells at Aiden and orders him to go to his room. Consumed by anger and confusion, she grabs the cursed videotape, smashes it into pieces, and throws it into the fireplace to burn. As she watches it burn, tears stream down her face while she asks herself what she did wrong and what Samara had really wanted from her. Then she turns around and notices another copy of the videotape hidden beneath the couch. Instantly, every event connected to Samara flashes through her mind, and Rachel realizes that the curse spreads like a virus. She whispers to herself, "This is all because of me." In the final scene, Rachel and Aiden sit together watching another copy of the videotape while Rachel makes yet another duplicate of it. Trying to reassure her son, she tells him that everything is going to be okay. But Aiden quietly asks, "What about the people who watched this copy? What will happen to them?" Rachel remains silent, staring at the black and white image of the well on the television screen. Thank you for watching. Don't forget that your opinion matters to us, so be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel.